campaign. Joining us now to share their thoughts on Trump's plan are two guests. Derek Maltz is the former director of the DEA's Special Operations Division and former chief of the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force. And April Babcock, who lost her son to fentanyl, is the founder of Lost Voices of Fentanyl. Derek and April, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Derek, starting with you, Trump is proposing a large-scale ad campaign to help the public understand the horrors of fentanyl, as well as tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China to stem the flow of fentanyl. What do you make of these plans?
Well, number one, I'm very pleased that President Trump has stepped up in a big way, very proactive, a couple of months before he's taken office, and he's recognized, along with J.D. Vance, the destruction that has been caused around this country, like families like April Babcock and the hundreds of thousands of families out there that have buried their loved ones because of this poison. Like when I look at this book given to me by April Babcock, thousands of kids dead, okay? Because our government wasn't doing the most fundamental thing, keeping Americans safe and educating the families and the kids. And that's what's been missing. So I'm very pleased at some of the rhetoric, and I know that this president is about action, not words.
And April, given your own loss and the loss of many Americans have experienced, how effective do you see a large-scale ad campaign be?
I mean, honestly, this is one of the things we've been screaming from the rooftops for 4 years that we wanted our president, the commander-in-chief, to do a public awareness campaign, just like they did for COVID. Within 3 months of COVID, everyone knew social distance, wash your hands, wear a mask. Where we've been crying, I mean, really, this has been a crisis for 13 years. So for 4 years, we've been going in front of the White House pretty much with tears running down our face. Please help us, do something. So I am very grateful and thankful that Trump is coming back in office, and he's finally, that's going to happen, because so many families, too many families, didn't even know what illicit fentanyl was until their kid is dead and they're reading a toxicology report, and then they do homework on fentanyl. A lot of people have no idea. So this needs to come from our president down. So every American, this is going to give tools to the parents that's never heard of it before. This is coming from our president, warning Americans, and then they can educate their teenagers. They can educate their grandkids. This has been way overdue.
And Derek, reports say fentanyl-involved deaths have gone up more than 23-fold over the last decade, and from 36,000 in 2019 to over 73,000 in 2022. Give us a sense of the scope of the fentanyl deaths in the U.S. What more do you think can be done about this issue?
Well, first of all, let me just make this clear. I have no confidence in the CDC director and the stats that they're putting out. Number one, they're very delayed, they're inaccurate. A lot of the parents have complained that the cause of death of their own child wasn't properly reported. So for one, I'm looking forward to some accurate statistics. I also would like to know how much Narcan is being administered and given out, because I know Narcan is saving probably millions of people. We have no idea because no one keeps the stats. Like April said, during COVID, everyone knew COVID was killing, COVID was getting people sick every night on TV. And with the fentanyl crisis, which is the worst in the history of our country, we don't even know how many people are dying from fentanyl. So in my view, there's a lot more dead from fentanyl than we're hearing about. And by the way, it's not just fentanyl. Now we have the nitazines, the etonitazines, the metonitazines, the protonitazines, the carfentanil, the xylazines, all coming out of these labs in China. So it's not just coming over the border. It's being purchased on the dark web today. They're having their own pill operations and fentanyl processing operations in America. So it's getting out of control. But I'm very confident with President Trump and the team that he's bringing on. This is going to be addressed, and we're going to deal with the cartels. And they're going to be feeling the pain, because they need to be held accountable. Too many Americans have died. The cartels working with Chinese criminals have killed more Americans than any terrorist organization in the history of the country. So it's time that we step up for the families. And it's families like April's and the Army that's around the country that's out there on their own time raising money to try to educate the country. So I'm thankful for what's going to happen in the next couple of months.
And expanding on that last part, April, as the founder of Lost Voices of Fentanyl, what more do you think communities or the government can do to tackle this issue of fentanyl?
I mean, we really want drug dealers held accountable and fentanyl traffickers. Fentanyl traffickers are serial killers. This is genocide. This is the death of America's future. They say our children are our future. What are we without our future? Drug dealers need to be held accountable, and there needs to be a mandatory minimum, not up to laws. Oh, they can receive up to 5, up to 10. Maryland doesn't even have a drug-induced homicide law. I testified at the beginning of this year on a drug-induced homicide law in Maryland, and they tucked it away in a drawer to not even be voted upon. Let us vote upon it. We want that law. Drug dealers should be held accountable, and fentanyl traffickers are serial killers. They need to do real time without consequences for your actions. Why change your behavior? There's too much money to be had in this. Yeah, Trump did say something about death to drug dealers. I don't know if I was for that at first, but I am now the more I thought about it. My kid, I have a life sentence. My kid is in an urn in my living room. You know what killed my son? I did for 20 years. For 20 years, I dabbled doing cocaine, and I'm alive today. My son was born the wrong time. This is planned attack by China to kill us, to destabilize our country, to destroy our military. In another 10 years going at this rate, we're going to have no military. We want real action against China, and I think Trump is the only one that could possibly do it. And I don't even think tariffs are enough.
And Derek, when it comes to how fentanyl comes into the country, people often talk about the border. Talk to us about how these drugs enter the U.S. So what are some avenues that might not come immediately to mind?
Well, I mean, look, the Mexican cartels are, multi-billion-dollar entrepreneurs. They know how to get drugs into the country. They've been doing it a long time. They use tunnels, they use tractor trailers, they use, commercial aircraft, they use boats, they use containers, they use human smugglers, they have compartment traps in their vehicles. There's so many different ways, but I want to go back to something that's really important. So the advertising campaign, we really applaud that, but we want to make sure that every kid in America in schools, in elementary schools, right through into high schools, have mandatory education. Because unlike when I grew up, this is not like just smoking marijuana with 3% THC. Right now we have poisonous synthetic drugs coming into this country at record levels, so we have to make sure that we're addressing the demand as well as the supply. But I want to decimate the cartel's ability to operate and produce the poison because they're too sophisticated. They're operating with impunity. They've had no fear over the last 4 years because they were not being held accountable. When they come into the country, they commit crimes. They're being let out to commit more crimes. So I feel like the accountability is long overdue, and we just need to make sure our kids are educated because, taking the supply alone from the cartels is not going to solve the problem. We must educate all Americans that are vulnerable right now. And because COVID, depression, anxiety, addiction, mental illness is on the rise, so we have to take care of the kids.
In April, one way fentanyl has been pouring into the U.S. besides the southern border is through something known as the de minimis loophole. Talk to us about that and what the solution here is.
Yeah, so with de minimis, for people that don't know, it's anything under $800 coming into our country from China, virtually uninspected, tax-free, and there's no way to track this. So bad actors like drug dealers in China, they send precursor chemicals. The majority of pill processes have been shipped in to our country de minimis. We're right now receiving 4 million de minimis packages into the United States every day. How can CBP, they don't even have enough people to check 4 million de minimis packages every day. We want that closed. That can be done, honestly, Trump, Biden could have done it. He could have said, close the de minimis loophole now. He hasn't done it. So maybe Trump will do that because it's not just the southern border or the northern border. It's coming in here through de minimis. And I know families who have bought it on the dark web and it got delivered to their door and they're dead because it wasn't a Xanax or a Percocet. It was a fake pill, and pills aren't laced. They're either fake or real. So fake pills are flooding into our country. And right now the cartels, there's stockpiles of fentanyl country. So, when Trump gets in, this isn't going to, a lot of people think, oh, the deaths are going to way decline. There's way too much fentanyl in this country right now for any deaths to way decline. And something I also want to say, a lot of people that are getting Narcan and live, there's people walking around with hypoxia brain injuries that we're not tracking. There's people in comas that we're not tracking. I just met someone in Maryland the other day. His kid has been in a coma for 6 months. Is that being tracked? And when he's probably going to die from pneumonia or bed sores or something else, it's going to go down as death from pneumonia. They're not accurately tracking these deaths, and they're not tracking everyone that's been Narcan who's walking around with brain injuries. When you're walking around with a brain injury, you don't make very good decisions. So most people aren't going to stop using when they're walking around with a brain injury.
Derek Maltz, April Babcock, thank you both so much for your time.